The Moderation Form, the Way of the Rancor. In the time of Palpatine's chancellorship, Form 6 is the current standard in Jedi lightsaber training. This form balances the emphases of other forms with overall moderation, in keeping with the Jedi quest to achieve true harmony and justice without resorting to the rule of power. It is considered the diplomat's form because it is less intensive in its demands than the other disciplines, allowing Jedi to spend more time developing their skills in perception, political strategy, and negotiations. In practice, Form 6 is a combination of Forms 1, 3, 4, and 5. Young Jedi spend their first few years studying Form 1, and then a year or two with each additional form before completing their training. By comparison, a Form 6 Master will spend at least 10 years studying only that form after completing basic Form 1 training. Form 6 well suits the modern Jedi's role in the galaxy, in which a knight overly trained in martial combat might be at a loss to resolve a complex political conflict between star systems. However, full masters of other forms sometimes consider Form 6 to be insufficiently demanding. The history of Niman's development is one of the most convoluted. The original description of Form 6 in the Lightsaber article describes it as a combination of Forms 1, 3, 4, and 5 specifically, the Jedi Path throwing in Form 2 for good measure. However, the article Dark Forces Part 4 of the Crudest Matter describes Niman as simply being a lightsaber-adapted version of the ancient Jar-Kai form developed by the Yavshin swordsman. And then the Jedi Path confuses things further by stating that Niman's pure root is Surisu. However, none of these ideas are mutually exclusive, due to the fact that Niman is a hybrid martial art intended to consolidate various disciplines under one roof. The baseline single-blade technique is the mixture of the previous 5 forms. The dual saber element is taken entirely from classical Jar-Kai, and Surisu is likely the source for Niman's core discipline and mindset. Beyond being a hybrid martial art, there is comparatively little information on the physical technique of Niman. It basically boils down to being a balanced mixture of techniques intended to be easily adapted for any situation. As the form was intended for academics rather than combat specialists, it was designed to be easily learned, so that librarians didn't have to take time away from studying to practice. However, mastering Niman took upwards of a decade, unsurprising given how comprehensive and multifaceted the technique was. If the examples set by its masters are anything to go by, Niman is effectively a blank slate that practitioners can configure into whatever they need it to be. The stances and maneuvers of Niman are detailed in various sources. Mysteries of the Jedi gave us the opening stance, blade extended off to one side in a one-handed grip, offhand held across the chest. The Revenge of the Sith Visual Dictionary identified another Niman stance, a two-handed guard position similar to the Ataru opening stance, facing the opponent at an angle with the blade held vertical on the dominant side but at head height and angled slightly in. The example stance presented in the Essential Guide to the Force was a single-handed low guard, blade extended off to the side behind the body, facing the opponent at an angle. The example stance presented in Star Wars lightsabers was the Surisu Brace Ready stance, clearly one of the elements that was carried over from Form 3. Artwork for the Star Wars trading card game depicted a two-handed low guard stance, blade held off to the side in front of the duelist. The live combat maneuvers of Niman were first detailed in the Jedi Academy training manual. The Jedi Path describes Niman as using integrated telekinetic attacks to compensate for a relaxed focus on blade work, so accordingly, both of the maneuvers specific to Niman were integrated telekinetic strikes. The first, called Draw Closer, was based around seizing an opponent with telekinesis and pulling him into your blade. The second, the Pushing Slash, was based around following up a lightsaber strike with a force push, blasting away the opponent. Beyond the form's emphasis on moderation and balance, there is little to no information on the nature of Niman's associated disciplines and mindset, so this section is going to be quite speculative. Intended to achieve harmony and justice without resorting to the rule of power, Niman was specifically opposed to the domineering philosophies of Form 5, which was in fact the primary impetus behind the development of the moderation form. As a jack-of-all-trades fighting form that combines a balanced and comprehensive technique with practical force abilities, the general theme behind Niman is consolidation, bringing every possible technique into a single vessel in order to maximize a duelist's options. Rather than rely on a specific skill set to power through every situation, Masters of Niman would adopt the specific skills and techniques best suited to the given situation, with combat becoming an exercise in resource management rather than the application of power. Niman is essentially contentious opposition, the fighting style. Whatever an adversary brings to bear, a Niman master will respond with the equal and opposite, defeating the opponent by harmonizing with them rather than overpowering them. Niman is described as the diplomat's form, but I feel a more accurate description would be the trickster's form, as it maximizes a combatant's ability to win on the back of ingenuity and improvisation. Darth Traya was a particular advocate of the Niman form, and her commentary on it was as follows. It would serve you well to assimilate the style the Jedi is demonstrating. It is called Niman, and it is a very balanced form. Niman offers none of the specific strengths of the other forms, but neither does it have their weaknesses. While the general versatility of Niman served Johun Othone well on the battlefields of Ruusan, after the war, his focus on diplomacy over combat led to his technique atrophying, as he made only the most basic efforts to maintain his skills, which effectively made him a typical Niman specialist. The skills of the Jedi with the green lightsaber were raw and basic. When he struck, it was with either strength or speed, but not both at the same time. His blade came in high or low, but never altered its plane during the attack. And because the overwhelming majority of Niman specialists fall into the mold set by Othone, merely competent at everything and exceptional at nothing, the Niman form itself gets a bad rap, referred to as insufficiently demanding by masters of other forms. However, this idea of Niman being inferior falls apart the moment you turn your attention to Form 6 combat specialists. Exar Kun employed Niman very aggressively, his greatest successes in battle achieved by abruptly shifting fighting styles in the midst of combat, whether manhandling foes with physical combat or picking up an extra lightsaber. To maximize the effectiveness of this strategy, he heavily customized his lightsaber, the modifications and resulting fighting style detailed in the original Essential Guide to Weapons and Technology. As the battles against the Jedi escalated, Kun altered his normal lightsaber into a more deadly and dangerous weapon. Kun added a second emitter matrix on the opposite end of the hand grip, allowing him to release two blue-white blades simultaneously. The Dark Jedi wielded the saber much as he would a quarterstaff, using one blade to block incoming attacks then quickly spinning the hand grip to use the second blade to strike a killing blow against his opponent. Customized controls allowed him to adjust each blade's length from half a meter to 1.5 meters. Panels controlled each blade's intensity. At its highest setting, a blade was like any other lightsaber, with the ability to cut through dense materials such as armor plating and durasteel with virtually no resistance. At the lowest power setting, a blade became a simple shaft of light, delivering no damage and providing no resistance against incoming lightsaber attacks. By abruptly shortening a blade or dropping it to the lowest power setting, Kun tricked his opponents into overextending themselves during attacks, giving him an opportunity for a deadly counterstrike. By coupling these tactics with his force abilities to predict the actions of his opponents, Kun became virtually unstoppable in combat. We see similar tactics from Darth Krayt, though his approach was focused on the physical technique rather than the nature of his weapon, shifting between standard and reversed grips in the middle of complicated attack sequences, shifting between one or two blades, or abrupt integration of telekinesis, basically doing whatever he can to be as sketchy and unpredictable as possible. The examples of Exar Kun and Darth Krayt make it clear that in the hands of a dedicated combat specialist, Niman is utterly deadly. It's just that most Niman practitioners are not dedicated combat specialists. Not only does Niman include a dedicated dual saber component, but it is specifically designed for universal compatibility. Darth Maul studied both Niman and classical Jarkai to learn how to wield dual sabers, and he applied these skills to his use of the saber staff. Beware the Sith describes him as entering a fighting trance where he focuses on his weapon, visualizing both blades simultaneously. Niman's dual blade component is optimized for wielding a Shoto short lightsaber as the offhand weapon, though it was easily adapted for two full-length lightsabers. As a Jedi Battle Master, Kaosen Darach is a Niman Master, and whether or not the form is his primary discipline, I think it is, his efforts against the Sith in the Tor Return trailer is an excellent demonstration of what can be expected from a combat-oriented Niman specialist. Though Darth Maul is primarily noted as a Form 7 specialist, he is also a master of Niman, which technically speaking makes him the most heavily featured Form 6 practitioner in Star Wars media, with appearances in both The Phantom Menace and TCW. In fact, I would argue that the Duel of Fates is primarily a demonstration of his Niman mastery rather than Juyo, as he spends the majority of the engagement performing a roving tactical retreat, employing a balanced mixture of all of his skills to maintain the tactical advantage while he took the fight to a location of his own choice. More notable, however, are the fallen Jedi Sith Lords Exar Kun and Darth Krayt, the primary antagonists of the Tales of the Jedi and Legacy comic series respectively.